Okay, so today we're talking about the Sony A7C, and we're going to talk about whether or not you should still use this camera, and most importantly, why I personally still use this camera in 2023, and I think that this is an excellent camera. I'm going to share with you what I use it for and why I still think that this is a fantastic camera. Let's do this. Hey, welcome everyone. So today we're talking about the Sony A7C. This camera is, I wouldn't say old, but it's not exactly a spring chicken. You know, there are other cameras on the market that are better, even from Sony. And we have cameras like the Sony A7S3 or the FX3 or the Sony A7R5. You know, there are so many cool cameras. Some cameras shoot in 8K, in 4K, 120 frames per second. And I still don't feel the pressure, the need to get something better than the Sony A7C. This is a great camera for a couple of reasons. There are a couple of downsides also, which I'm also going to cover in this video, just to give you an idea. So every camera or smartphone computer, like, there are no optimal things out there. Every camera, every piece of gear always has downsides. That's just the way of nature. That's just the way things work. So I'm going to cover why I like this camera. So foremost, it's because this is a full frame camera and you can get it at a pretty good price all over the place. Like, I think it's valued just right in most stores anyway. And it's a full frame camera, as I said, meaning it will give you really good image quality, great low light performance, and it's versatile in a lot of ways. So for example, this is not a dedicated point and shoot camera like just for taking pictures, but it takes fantastic pictures. I've used this doing wedding photography and it works just fine. Had no complaints about it whatsoever. You know, you can shoot pictures very quickly and get really good image quality, so it's great for that. And because of the size of this camera, using it with a smaller lens like this one, this is the Samyang 24mm f1.8, great lens, very affordable. This can be a very compact tourist camera. I mean, if you just look at it, it's like it's not very big, you know. So I'm not gonna say that it fits in your pocket. This is not a pocket camera, but for a full frame camera, this is excellent. Like, looking at the design and, you know, the build quality, this is a very good body, and battery life is fantastic on this thing. And the thing that I've noticed about this camera is, though, because of its size, it's not the most comfortable camera to hold. I'm gonna be really honest with you. There are much more comfortable cameras to hold if you're working as a professional photographer or videographer or whatever you do with your camera. Probably not the most enjoyable camera to hold all day long. But if you can overcome that, the grip is kind of tiny to hold. I mean, it's not awful. I'm just saying that there's lots of cameras that feel better. Then this is great. Now, for me personally, I mostly make YouTube videos, so I set this up on a tripod, and so it's not that important for me. Sometimes I will do wedding photography, so for a couple of hours I will use it, and it works great for that. Now, one of the things that a lot of reviewers don't mention about this camera is that despite the size of this camera, the battery life, using a very good battery, but the battery life on this thing is fantastic. Like, when I shoot 4K videos, I've tested it out, like I can shoot like almost 4 hours straight. And when it comes to pictures, I've taken thousands and thousands of photos on a single day on one battery charge, you know. So battery wise, this camera is spectacular. Now, I want to talk about image quality. It sort of comes into two different fields. We're talking about image quality, you know, from taking photos, and we're talking about image quality when it comes to video. So when it comes to photos, you get 24 megapixel photos and they look awesome, especially if you know what you're doing, if you got some talent. Like, to be completely honest, when it comes to taking good pictures, it's really most about the photographer and not so much the camera. But if you know how to utilize this thing, shooting in RAW, you can get really spectacular photos. Now, I mostly use this as a content creation tool for making YouTube videos and videos on Amazon. And so for that purpose, I would say that the image quality is really good. You get that full frame look, you get really good low light performance. Now, I've recently started to shoot in log, which means that I can use LUTs. Unfortunately, this camera does shoot only up to 8-bit, which is a bit sad. 10-bit would be better, but honestly, I don't really care too much because it works. I mean, if you've seen most of my videos, you see that the image quality is pretty good. So I'm not going to complain too much about it just being 8-bit. Now, when it comes to slow motion, you can shoot in 120 frames per second, 1080p though, and you can't do 4K 120 or 4K 60. It's like 4K 30 or 24, that's all you got. And that's a bit sad, but as a content creation camera, this is a spectacular camera, mostly because it's got this little swivel screen here, so you can see yourself when you're recording, and it just works great. As I mentioned, the battery life is so fantastic, and the image quality that you get out of this camera is just spectacular. And actually, the videos that you take with this camera is actually in 6K, and it downsamples to 4K. So you actually get very sharp and crisp 4K image out of this thing. So I really like the image that I get from this camera, and I'm gonna use it for a couple of more years. I see no reason to upgrading this thing. Now, it's only 24 megapixels. For some people, there are better cameras out there, like, you know, that can shoot 42 megapixels or 60 megapixels or even 100 megapixels. But for most people, I think 24 is actually quite good, you know. I was looking a lot at the Sony A7C because I wanted that 4K 120 frames per second, but sadly, it only shoots in 12 megapixel photos. And if you're gonna, you know, spend a lot of money on a camera, I want at least 24 megapixels. I'm sorry. Now, I was also looking at the Sony A1, which is magical because you got 8K, you got 4K 120, you got something like 50 megapixels. It's amazing, but no swivel screen. I mean, come on. And there are all sorts of versions of these Sony cameras. There's one version that can shoot 8K, but only 4K 60, and then it's cropped. And I think that's the Sony Sony A7 IV. There's so many different names of these cameras. Now, again, there's lots of really brilliant cameras out there, and it really depends on what your needs are. But me shooting YouTube videos, this camera is just the cat's pajamas. Love this thing, and I'm gonna use it for a long time. I think so, at least. Now, fortunately, it only has one card reader. It's never been an issue for me, but sometimes when I'm doing wedding photography, I can get a bit nervous. So if you're a wedding photographer or making, wedding videos, I would actually recommend getting a camera that has two card readers, so you can record to two separate memory cards at the same time, just to give you, a certainty that, in case one of these memory card breaks, the other one will surely work. Like, the odds of two memory cards breaking down at the same time, it's just not possible, really. So yeah, as far as cameras are concerned, as far as the Sony A7C is concerned, this is a brilliant piece of camera hardware. And for someone who's been testing out a lot of cameras, playing around, with GoPros, with the Sony ZV-1, this is a great camera. Again, if I could just have a magic wand and add something to this thing, I suppose it would be nice to get the 8K and 4K 120 frames per second. That's pretty much it. Otherwise, I think this is a brilliant camera, and I think that most people would be satisfied getting this camera for all sorts of purposes. If you're shooting, weddings, if you're shooting astrophotography, taking night photos, or if you're using it as a travel camera, my goodness, like, I can't imagine a better full frame camera than the Sony A7C. A7C. It's been a long day, I'm sorry. But yeah, this camera, fantastic, top notch. I'm not gonna bore you anymore. That's all I really had to say about the Sony A7C. Yeah, that's right. Okay, see you in the next one. Take care, bye.